What's your problem anyway? It's legal stuff you'll never understand. In fact, I think you'll find I'm quite conversant in the finer points of our justice system, particularly as it pertains to guns and gun-related activity. Horseradish, you're all trousers and no briefs. Oh yeah, well just try me, smart lady. Fine. Obviously you aren't going to leave me alone, so just ask your question. Ahem. I'm Captain Blacktooth, speaking for the record. State your name, occupation, and cause of death. Felicity Wainwright, defense attorney, lost a court-approved trial by combat. What? Trial by combat has been outlawed for like 15 years. You do understand that ghosts don't visually age as time passes, right? Oh, right. So your client called for a trial by combat, which meant you and the prosecutor had to face off in a duel. I'm not sure if that's how that works. That's correct. And you lost? She squints at you. Are you acting dumb to try and throw me off guard? I withdraw the question. Why are you stuck as a ghost? Because although trial by combat was already well out of fashion at the time, it was still a valid legal recourse. I should have been prepared for the possibility, but I wasn't. My lack of training resulted in an innocent man being executed for murder. How was he executed? Hanging, I assume. Obviously, I wasn't around to see it. So to release you, I'd need to prove that the loss wasn't your fault. The trial duel was completely fair and above board. There's no chance of there having been foul play on the prosecutor's part. My loss was my own. Then, I'd have to prove your client was actually guilty and therefore your feelings of responsibility are misplaced? The look she gives you is hard and cold. Look, you think you know a thing or two about the law. How about you tell me the first rule of being a defense attorney? Don't make fun of the judge's beard, don't refer to his gavel as the weird little hammer, or don't accidentally call him mom. I can't decide.
Weird little hammer.
I was leaning towards weird little hammer too. Don't refer to his gavel as a weird little hammer. You have to trust and believe in your client. If you don't believe your client is innocent, you'll never convince anyone else he is either. That's not true. I've been watching a lot of Legal Eagle lately.
That's right.
So, sidebar, there's an amazing YouTube channel called Legal Eagle, and you should watch it because every video that he puts out is just really cool. That's all I'm gonna watch about that. I saw out of the corner of my eye as soon as I read that line, if you don't believe your client is innocent, you were just immediately like, that's not true.
It's not true. No, he said that in one of the episodes.
That's true. So if I want to convince you he was guilty, you'll have an uphill fight, gal. You're essentially playing prosecutor here. Alright, tell me about the case. My defendant was Matthew Guilty McCready, accused of the murder of Victor Vic Timsbury at noon on June 18th, 1878 in Reno. Your client was actually named Guilty. Come on. Names don't mean anything. I once had a client named Ike Elida Guy, or I killed a guy. I killed a guy, and he was totally innocent. Elida Guy. I obviously could not read it. For someone's actual legal name, sure, but nicknames are usually given with some sort of basis. You've never met a really tall guy named Tiny or a fat guy named Slim? Arguably, the nickname Guilty would reinforce my client's innocence. That's totally absurd, but I'll let it rest for now. Even my meager knowledge of the law is, like, getting slightly triggered by, like, all these, like, little things. I'll let it rest. Jeez. Or I withdraw the question, or I state for the record. God. What was the cause of death? Timsbury was shot through the heart with a .45 caliber revolver. And did McCready own such a gun? Yes. He was holding it at the time, and subsequent examination showed that it had been recently fired. Are you messing with me? This was at noon precisely. Yes, this was confirmed by witnesses. Also, McCready owned a fancy pocket watch that chimed on the hours. There were witnesses? About half a dozen of them. I'm pretty sure there's something you aren't telling me. I'm not obligated to play my hand face up, Ms. Prosecutor. Hang on a second. Shot with a pistol in front of witnesses at exactly noon. Was this a duel? So you can add 2 plus 2 after all. Well done. Well, as luck would have it, I've just recently read a whole book about duel law. What? Why? No reason, I just happened to cross it at the library and thought it would be interesting. You read an entire code of law you found at random just for the heck of it? Yep. Let me just do a quick review. A duel is legal provided it's between exactly 2 people at a specific prearranged time and place using the same or at least essentially similar weapons, and they have to either face each other down and quick draw at the appointed moment, or do the 10 paces turn and fire routine. Is that right? That's the gist of it, yes? So I guess let's start with you telling me the facts of this case, and I'll interrupt you rudely if I have any questions. Alright, but if you push me on trivial nonsense, I'll get mad and you'll have to start over. That seems fair. Go ahead. McCready and Timsbury got into an argument in a saloon on the evening of June 17th. Apparently Timsbury accused McCready of cheating at poker. I have some questions. Shoot. What was the name of the saloon? The Two-Headed Horse. Weird. Did they have one? No, I think the proprietor was going from a sort of double entendre, but it didn't really work. Ew. Huh. No, it really doesn't. Two-headed spider, maybe, but anyway, do you have any other questions or getting on with this? I have another question. What day of the week was this? Monday. Monday, June 17th, 1878. Well, that makes sense. Everyone's always a bit grumpy on a Monday. They should make the weekend Sunday and Monday instead. Then you could spend Monday relaxing and having to go to work. But then... Do you have any other questions? Yeah, I want to ask something else. Tell me more about the argument. There isn't much to tell. The other players in the game had already folded their hands in that round, so they weren't paying very close attention. All we know is that Timsbury accidentally accused McCready of being a dirty, cheating varmint, and McCready said Timsbury was just sore because he'd been losing all night. McCready have a history of cheating? He'd been accused of it once or twice before, but Reno's a gambling town, and he hung out in the rough part of it. Getting accused of cheating by a sore loser when you're on a lucky streak is par of the course. Okay, what happened next? The bartender yelled at them to take it outside, but since it was dark out, they agreed to meet for a duel the next day. And that would be the 18th, you said? Yes, June 18th, 1878. I have a question. What? Did they set a specific time for the duel? Yes, high noon. Figures. Why is it always high noon? Tradition, I suppose, and since the sun is at its highest in the sky, everything's brightly lit and there aren't many shadows, so that's good for gunfighting. Plus, you can have your duel on your lunch break. Let me ask something else. Why didn't they just not fight? What? Well, a fight breaks out in the heat of the moment, that's one thing, but they cool off enough to schedule a meeting for the next day and still go through with it? A card game is a heck of a thing to get killed over. It's an honor thing, I suppose. That, and they were each confident that they wouldn't be the one getting killed. Yes, it's dumb, but it's also extremely immaterial. Toxic definitions of masculinity and the general lawlessness of the frontier are not what's on trial here. Why didn't they just fight right then and there? Because it was dark. You can't have a gunfight in the dark. No, I get that, but they could have just had a regular old fist fight. They were mad enough to shoot each other to death, but not punch each other? Well, without getting too psychoanalytical, these guys were gunfighters. I mean, they counted that as a significant part of their identity. Fighting without guns was not just outside their wheelhouse, they considered a waste of their time and talents. Like asking a fancy French chef to make you a grilled cheese sandwich. Sorry, never mind. What happened next? Well, the next day they both showed up shortly before noon and squared off about 30 feet from each other. When noon struck, McCready fired, fast enough that Timsbury didn't get his shot off, on account of having his head shot off. That's pretty much the long and short of it. I lost track of the story. Can you start over? Fine. Okay, let's start from the beginning. McCready and Timsbury, I have some questions. What was the name of the saloon? Two-Headed Horse. Go ahead. Okay. Alright. I'm gonna have to ask for some more details on that. What weapons were they using? McCready had a .45 caliber single-action Army revolver. Timsbury had an older model 36 caliber cap and ball Navy revolver, which he loaded with paper cartridges instead of packing the gunpowder by hand. Let me ask you something else. He fired exactly at noon. Yes, as soon as the church bells started ringing. You also mentioned McCready's pocket watch. Yes, he had a fancy pocket watch that chimed in the hour. Is that important for some reason? I guess not. Let me ask something else. He said there were witnesses. About half a dozen of them, watching from across the street or peeking through half-open shutters. Were they interviewed? Yes, and their stories lined up with what I told you. Were any of them known associates of McCready? I'm not aware of any of them being actual friends with McCready, but he was a local and a lot of people knew him. She gives you a suspicious look. Wait a minute, just where are you going with... Oh, never mind, I have another question. Could we start over? Alright. So I guess, my question now is, which dialogue tree seems the most interesting? I guess any of these three will probably lead to the, end of this, plot line here. So I'm not sure which one seems to be the most interesting. I'm kind of leaning towards the gun one. But also the noon one seems kind of interesting. I'm not too big on the witness one, though.
I would do noon because of the pocket watch and the church bells.
Okay, we'll do the noon one. He fired exactly at noon. So McCready fired as soon as the church bells struck noon? Yes, that's what I just said. Have you got a point to make, or are you just stalling for time to think? Objection! Gah, what the heck? McCready fired at the wrong time. What are you talking about? He fired at noon, but the church bells, there are witnesses. That's right. He fired at clock noon, but the duel was set for high noon. They aren't the same thing. High noon is just when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, depending on geography and the time of the year. It can be hours different from clock noon. McCready fired early, and that makes the duel illegal. So what do you say to that, counselor? I've got to hand it to you, Prosecutor Blacktooth. I almost said Blackfoot. That's the code. That's the name of the building I used to work in. Anyway, you're a lot better at this than I was giving you credit for. That's a good thought you had there. There's just one problem with it. Oh, what's that? I already thought it. Take that! She hurls a small book at you, which you just barely managed to catch. The 1878 Nautical Almanac. What the heck is this? I did my homework when I was preparing for that trial. My legal homework, since at the time I expected there to be an actual trial, not a gunfight. What you're holding there is a nautical almanac for the year 1878. There are bookmarks if you'd like to do the math yourself, but if you look up solar noon, aka high noon, for June the 18th and make the adjustment for Reno's longitude, what do you think you get? You've got to be kidding me. That's right, Ms. Prosecutor. 12 o'clock p.m. Precisely. No! Well, damn. Nice try, though. I mean that sincerely. That's all my ammo. I can't think of any way to disprove McCready's innocence. As far as I can see, it was a fair duel. Yes, and that's me with the guilt of an innocent man's death on my hands. An innocent man's death. You sure are good at repeating things people say. What if he didn't die? Say what now? But you didn't actually see the execution, right? Yes, well, I was indisposed, as you might say, being dead and all. So I didn't actually know whether or not it happened. Oh, come on. Look, I appreciate the effort, but you're barking at the wrong moon. Let me ask you something. Was the trial right after the duel? The 19th? Huh, no. I don't know what Reno's like now, but it didn't have a proper courthouse then. And he can't try a murder charge in the sheriff's front parlor. McCready sat in jail for a couple weeks, and then they transported him to Frisco. What with one thing and another, the trial didn't start until July 25th. Jeez, so much to the right to a speedy trial. The wheels grind slow. What did they say the month was?
June 18th was the murder.
July 25th? I mean, I think it's what, 90 days or something like that? So that's not that big of a deal to wait like a little bit over a month. I think. I don't remember what it is. I need more legal. What can you tell me about McCready? He was a gunfighter, though, through and through. And by that I mean he was an adrenaline addict, and dueling was his needle of choice. Hell, if you told me you had evidence that he cheated at poker with the specific intent of baiting people into challenging him to duels, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. He was a sly one. Her expression softens, and she sighs. I make him sound like a real devil. That's not fair. He was smart and charming, and could have been a good man if he'd chosen an entirely different life for himself. Well, I recall he had a really good head for numbers. He told me that he never forgot a date, and every man he'd ever killed, he'd remember to pour a beer on their grave for their birthday. Well, that's nice. Mm-hmm. A nicer birthday present would have been not having killed them in the first place, of course. Yep. I have another question. When was the execution? Well, we held the trial by combat on the 26th, and that was a Friday. They don't execute prisoners on the weekend, so presumably it would have been the following Monday, the 29th. In the morning? What with setting up the gallows and letting a crowd gather, they usually happen in the afternoon. Around 3, typically. Why did he invoke trial by combat? I was mightily surprised, let me tell you. The only thing I can figure it was his damn fool sense of gunfighter's pride or something. Like that was the only form of justice he was willing to submit himself to. I'll be back, I need to do some research, and the game doesn't look like it's recovering from this. Oh, there it goes. Alright, that was a little bit funky. Let's look up a date in this thing. This book is almost entirely tables of numbers labeled things like logarithm of the radius vector of the Earth. I'm not sure if that has any particular... that's just math nonsense. Why would, like, the radius vector of the Earth? I don't really know if you can express a radius as a vector in a particularly mathematically useful or interesting way.
And then find the logarithm for it.
Yeah, logarithm of a vector is also something I'm a little bit like, I'm not entirely sure what that means. But, I mean, you could, kinda, I don't know. You can look up any date in the year 1878 in it, though who knows if you'll be able to figure out anything from what it gives you. Look up a date. What month do I want to look at? I guess July. Pick a day. What are some of the interesting days? 25th? This was when McCready's trial started. No special astronomical events that day as far as you can tell. Look up a date. June 18th. That was the day of McCready and Timsbury's duel. Apart from the fact that High Noon and Reno matched up exactly with Clock Noon that day, there doesn't seem to be anything special about it. January 33rd. You'll have to look up the date in the fake almanac of not real days because it's not listed in this one. It's really not your fault. Our calendars were like ridiculous. Let's try again. January 1st. Doesn't seem like anything interesting happened that day. December 25th. Let's see, on that day, there was a moon, and it was somewhere between new and full. Alright. April 1st. Look up that day and get a lot of numbers that don't mean anything to you. Okay, fine. July 27th? I guess it was July 28th. Well, I thought... Wait, hold on. What was the date? Ah, crap.
Which one?
The date that he was supposedly hung.
July 29th, right?
Ah, okay. I couldn't remember it. July 29th. This was when MacReady was going to be executed. Let's see. Wow, wait a minute. According to this, there was a total eclipse of the sun that day, centered right over the Western Territories, and with its totality at 2:47 p.m. That's a hell of a thing. Hey, I got a question for you. I looked up July 29th in your almanac. What? Now you're just messing with me. No, look for yourself. Totality at 2:47 p.m., right over the Western Territories. Well, that's quite a thing, but I don't see how that affects... Wait, unless they're suggesting it was the perfect opportunity for MacReady to escape. That's absurd. Absurd like a fox. You said yourself that MacReady was really good at remembering dates. He could have read about the eclipse at any time and stored that knowledge away for future use, like to give himself an advantage in a duel or something. Alright, that's reasonable as far as it goes, but MacReady couldn't have worked the eclipse into an escape plan because he didn't have any say over the court schedule. You said with one thing and another, the trial didn't start until July 25th. MacReady could have caused any number of those delays himself by faking illness in prison, or messing with the horses on the ride to Frisco, or anything. This also could explain the trial by combat. You mean, there ended up being too much of a delay, so if a regular trial went too long and he was found guilty, he'd have missed the eclipse. Exactly. Whereas if he called for a trial by combat, everything would be resolved one way or the other in only one more day. Maybe you'd win and that'd be fine, but if you lost, he could use his escape plan. I have to admit... excuse me. Breathe in. I have to admit, this is pretty compelling, but it's all maybes and what-ifs. Yeah, maybe it happened, but maybe MacReady was rescued by leprechauns. Oh man, are there leprechauns in Frisco? You need some kind of hard evidence before this is any more than just a fun story, is what I mean. Well, let me ask you something else. How can I find evidence of MacReady's escape? Well, we don't know that an escape even happened. Something like that would have been in the news for certain. Okay, I'll see what I can find. In the news. I mean, I don't think there's anything... Where would I find news? I don't know. Can I put the... Oh, here we go. You find a few bundles of old newspapers at the bottom of one shelf. The Frisco Newsinator. You start at the bottom of the stack and flip through them until you find the paper for the week of July 28th through August 3rd, 1878. The main feature has to do with the eclipse and various accidents and spectacles that occurred because most people weren't expecting it. The editor apologized for bearing the announcement in the previous week's weather forecast. Most notably, all three men scheduled to be hanged on the 29th escaped in the confusion, and only two of them were recaptured. Unfortunately, their names aren't given. Looking. You don't find anything else relevant to the case. However, as you're putting the papers back in order on the shelf, a headline on a more recent issue catches your eye. Husband of famous inventor missing. The article's light on information, but apparently Mrs. Gunn's husband, Dan, vanished on the road while traveling to Dirtwater in business about 6 years ago. Law enforcement suspected bandits, but no evidence was found. That's kind of grim. Okay, well, I guess I can go back and talk to the lawyer. Is Bert going to spend the whole night solving a murder? I didn't intend to, but I guess so. I found a newspaper article. The guy's scheduled to be executed the day the eclipse escaped, and one of them was never caught. Which one? Well, didn't say, did it? Nope. Damn it. And executed criminals aren't given gravestones with their names on them, so you can't just go looking around Frisco Cemetery to find out. Listen, Captain, I really appreciate what you're trying to do, but at this point you'd have to actually find MacReady himself to prove he wasn't executed due to my failure. Well, I guess that's what I'll do then. How? What? How? Yeah, how in the world am I ever going to be able to figure this out? Huh. What's wrong with this keyboard? I swear. I can't... Oh, right. This doesn't take capital letters. McCready. Okay. As far as I can tell, I didn't see any, I didn't remember seeing anything about, clues about where to go in this game. There's the cemetery, but they told me that, you know, I can't, I imagine he's got as far a heck away from Frisco as he could, though, if he's the one that escaped. Alright. Go back to the coach. Okay, let's go... Let's, I guess we'll go to the... back to Dirtwater. And then if we're going to Frisco... Well, Frisco's in California, so to get as far away from Frisco as possible, I guess we would go to the circus or the Humming Cave. But I feel like this is the wrong approach. Like, I don't think that this is the, oh. I didn't realize there was another location for me to find. It's the Lazy Dude Ranch.